put those lights on. You never really can tell until you actually start watching the video. And then you realize without those on, it's really, really dark up here. So, well, welcome to the battle. Woo! All right. Are you battle weary yet?
Yes.
Because it hasn't even really begun. Sometimes I wonder, we get this mindset about following the call of God on our life, and we're going to go into this position, and we're going to be placed in this position. God's going to anoint us to do these great things, but we get really confused of what it's going to look like when we get there. And we get this mindset that, man, as soon as I step into position, darkness is just going to, and just all of darkness is going to bow down and be like, oh man, there's a man of God, there's a woman of God. Oh, please don't hurt me. No, please. It's not how this thing goes. We get put into our position and our placement, and then we come into the battle, and then we want to give up. Well, what did you expect? That has to be the question. You come into the place where God wants you, and once you get to the place where God wants you, once you start operating under the authority and the anointing of God in the position and placement, you've come through the wilderness, you've crossed over the Jordan, you've stepped into the promised land, and what did you expect? Because it's not looking the way that you expected, and things aren't happening, and the battle gets fierce, and so, man, you know what? I'd rather go back to the trials of the wilderness than face the battles of the promised land. At least in the wilderness and the trials, I saw the miracles. I saw God. It was the cloud by day. It was the pillar of fire by night. It was, God and I were like, And now I'm out here in the middle of the battle, and I feel isolated. I feel separated. I feel alone, and the enemy is surrounding me, and we come into battle too many times, and the problem is that we automatically take a defensive position. But God's not called us to be defensive. He's called us to be offensive. He's called us to advance the kingdom. He didn't just call us to step our foot across the Jordan and just try to hold the beachfront. This is going to be the last message on the series of the Call of God in our life. Papa Ridgeway will be preaching next week. Yeah, you hear that? I have to point out because I know he's going to watch it later. We're all excited. The following week after that, we're going to start really digging into a battle series. We're going to start looking at the book of Ephesians, and we're going to be combining it with the books of 1st and 2nd Timothy. Because Timothy was the pastor of the church of Ephesus, and the book of Ephesians is a battle strategy book. It is about spiritual warfare. Because Timothy found himself in Ephesus surrounded by witchcraft, surrounded by pagan idol worship, surrounded in a place of darkness, and spiritual landscape of Ephesus, I can imagine, looked probably pretty similar to Rawlins, Wyoming. And Timothy had to stand in the midst of that. And he had to fight. He didn't just protect the church that he found himself in. He actually made advancement. and he actually took ground for the kingdom of God. And so we're going to be digging into that. We're going to be looking at battle strategies. We're going to be looking at how to actually fight some of these battles that we're coming up against. Today, as we finish out this series on the call of God, we're talking about the transition from the wilderness into the promised land. So, in the storyline, what we have at this moment, Moses has passed away, and Joshua has been appointed by God and Moses over the children of Israel to lead the children of Israel into the promised land. And so the appointment of Joshua, the placement of Joshua starts out with God telling him something very specific. In Joshua chapter 1, we'll read what God tells Joshua. And we had talked a couple times about God wanting a Joshua generation and calling forth the Joshua generation, and how I believe that this specific church is actually called to be a Joshua generation for Rollins. Not every church in Rollins is called to be a Joshua generation for Rollins. Okay? Some other churches might be actually being called at the moment to be a Daniel generation for Rollins. Some of them might be being called to be a Samuel generation for Rollins. Some of them might be being called to be a David. But specifically Harvest Time, I feel like God is calling us as a Joshua generation church. And what that looks like for Rollins, Wyoming is that we are the generation that will lead Rollins, Wyoming into a new and better land. And we will lead them into the promise. We will come into the promised land first. We will fight the battles. We will secure the territory. And we will bring rest to the people. And this is what I believe God is calling for us to do. There are remnant churches all over America who are being called specifically for this task. To go into the land and retake the land as a possession that God has already given, and to hold it up so that it becomes a spiritual heritage to generation after generation after generation, that they would know rest, that they would know peace, because there was a generation who thought it important enough to go into the land and fight the battles that needed to be fought. And we will do that. And so we're going to partner with God in this. We're going to partner with God. We're going to get God strategies. We're going to get God ideas. We're not going to step out on our own. I was here this morning early praying, and my prayer this morning, being led by Holy Spirit, was, God, set our feet in cement, that we can't go to the left or to the right, but we can only go in the direction that you put before us, and we can only take the step that you show us to take. Don't let us get off to the left or to the right. This is what God is calling us to do. And you say, I didn't sign up for that. You know how volunteer thing works in the military? Thank you for volunteering. Now go take that mountain. But sir, no, you don't argue. You just, sir, yes, sir. Why are you here? I volunteered. Really? That's what my sergeant said. I don't know. He told me I volunteered, so I must have. Wasn't aware, but... So Joshua is set to come into the land, and God speaks to him. And starting in Joshua chapter 1 and verse 1, it says, After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore, arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I am giving to them, to the people of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, just as I promised to Moses. From the wilderness to this Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites to the great sea, toward the going down of the sun, shall be your territory. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. If we really are a Joshua Generation Church, if we really are called to do what I believe God is calling us to do, then there is a assignment put on us by God. And along with the assignment comes the knowledge and the awareness that with God we have the ability and we will carry out the assignment. We will be successful. We will be prosperous. We will be victorious in battle. It's not up for debate. The only time it comes up for debate is when we turn to the left or to the right. If we sway off the path, now it's up for debate as to whether or not we have victory in battle. As long as we stay true and we stay focused and we stay on the path and on the mark, there is no question as to whether or not the battle is going to be won. Part of the problem that a lot of Christians face is that after we have been in battle for a while, and because we're fighting it the wrong way, pause that there for a second, because I have to touch on this. Why do we fight it the wrong way? We fight it the wrong way because we never sought God's strategies before we entered into battle. See, we were just clicking along, life was just good, everything was great, and all of a sudden it just felt like the enemy just pounced on us out of nowhere. The reality is had we been in close communication with God while we were clicking along the way, we wouldn't have been pounced on. We wouldn't have been taken in ambush. God would have told us, hey, you need to prepare for this. Hey, you need to go this way. You need to fly. Because He's not going to let us just smooth walk up into an ambush and get overtaken. Come back to this in just a second. As soon as I find it. Wrong book. What are you in there? Second Samuel chapter 5, starting in verse 17. I'm going to read you a little story about this, and then we'll get back to the issue that we were talking about. 2 Samuel chapter 5, starting in verse 17, it says, "When the Philistines heard that David had been appointed king over Israel, all the Philistines went up to search for David. But David heard of it and went down to the stronghold." The Philistines were intent on taking David out. Okay. Now, if David is not in relationship with the Lord at this moment, it's possible that he could have still heard about the Philistines coming after him, because after all, he's king. Right? Heavy is the head that wears the crown. I mean, when you get up top, the little birdies tell you stuff. You start getting a whole lot of I'm going to freak a bunch of you out. You start getting a whole lot of information that you never knew before. But it's for a purpose, so you can make right decisions. And God is working in this. The Philistines were going to take him out, and God warned him ahead of time so that he would go to the proper place and be positioned. Now, it says that, verse 18, "Now the Philistines had come and spread out in the valley of Rephaim, and David inquired of the Lord, 'Shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you give them into my hand?'" Coming back into this for a moment, I'm coming into the promised land. What does it look like to fight offensively and not defensively? You come to the Lord, you see the enemy on the horizon, and you don't get ready to defend your territory. You ask the Lord, "Lord, I mean, if there's one guy in the Word of God, in all of history that we have recorded in the Bible, who is a warrior beyond warriors, it's David. I mean, this guy is all about confronting the enemy. No. We're not going to let them get this close. We're not going to let them come into our territory. No, if we see them, we're going to charge out and we're going to take them out." I mean, David and his mighty men of valor, there were reports that this one guy with the spear took out 800 Philistines in one day with a spear. One guy. And it wasn't even David. It was one of his mighty men of valor. I mean, these dudes were not afraid of war. These were like all of the Green Berets that you could ever find in the military, plus the Navy SEALs, and plus the Army Rangers. They all came together and they said, "Let's just go do it. Let's just take them out. We're not going to wait for them to come to us. Let's go to them." David had this mindset. It started when he first came into the camp with Saul, and there's Goliath, and the armies of the Lord are shaking in their boots, and he's like, "What are you doing? What? Why are you waiting for him to attack? Go get him." But he's one guy. "Oh, he's huge." He's one guy. And on top of that, he's an uncovenanted individual. He has no covenant with our God. The reality, the reason why we falter so much in battle is because we're more afraid of the enemy than we are of our God. We have a bigger fear of the enemy than we do of the Lord. And so when Goliath stands in front of us and his stature eclipses the sun and casts a shadow on us, we start getting afraid. But what we don't realize is the sun is still behind Goliath, and it's much bigger than Goliath ever thought of being. He asked God, he said, "I'm ready. If I run after him, are you going to give me the victory?" I mean, he was anxious to. David's kind of one of those guys that he's kind of anxious to just get in fights.
Yeah.
You ever had a friend like that? I had a friend like that. The problem was I had a friend like that in prison. That's a bad place to have a friend like that. I mean, we were playing tennis one day. Yes, we had tennis in prison. We were playing tennis one day, and another guy knocks this tennis ball over, and my friend sees it. Now, the sensible thing to do, pick up the stupid ball and give it back to him. Say, here, man. But what my friend did, boom, kicks that ball, it goes way over the fence and out. This guy comes up to us. He said, why'd you kick my ball, man? My friend's like, you shouldn't have let your stupid ball come into our area. Stop, just shut up, dude. Right? This guy is, unbeknownst to me at the time, a GK5 gang member. The GK5s were a Mexican gang inside the prison in Colorado. Big Mexican gangs. So as soon as he said you shouldn't have let your ball come into our territory, he looked at me, and I'm angry at my friend, but he thought I was angry at him. So I see how it's going to be 2-on-1. You want to play this game, huh? That's fine, I'll go get my homies and I'm like, so he walks out, and he starts walking to a group of about 5 guys. And I'm just like, I told my friend, I said, if we make it through this, I'm killing you. Because these dudes don't mess around. I mean, I know, just looking at them, every single one of them's got a shank on them. And this isn't going to go down too well. So they start walking up to us, and they get about from here to the back of the church away, and they stop. And the guy looks, and he looks at the guy that just ran and told him, and he points in our direction, and the guy's like, yeah. And so he pushes him back, and he walks up by himself. And once he gets a little closer, I recognize him. I'm like, oh, I know this guy. And he comes up to me, and he said, he was one of my friends. I didn't even know he was a shot caller in the game. Who knew? He comes up to me, and he says, Rick, I'm so sorry. He said, we'll take care of this guy. Don't let it bother you. He said, we apologize for messing up your stuff. If there's any problems, you let me know. We'll take care of him. Just, everything's okay. I'm like, okay. He didn't inquire of the Lord before he decided to kick the ball, right? He's looking for a fight. David was one of those guys that seems like he's always looking for a fight, but at least he had enough sense to actually, God, will you give him into our hand? There's a spiritual reality here that should take place with us in our relationship with the Lord as we grow spiritually in maturity. We come to this place where we look at the enemy and we're not afraid of battle. I'm not afraid of the battle. I see darkness on the horizon. I'm not afraid of it. You know what? Because I know who's behind me. And because I know who's behind me, it gives me a boldness to actually run out and meet the enemy. The problem we get in, or the area we get into trouble in, is when we run out and meet the enemy without at first asking the one who's behind us. Hey, you got my back, right? I mean, I can do this, right? And you... Yep. We run out half-cocked sometimes and get all tore up. And then we come back, oh, what happened? And it's like, I didn't tell you to do that. You went out there on your own. You didn't have no plan. You didn't have no strategy. You even took off without the backup. I mean, they were just sitting here like, where's he going? You come running back like the sons of Sceva. You're naked and they tore your clothes off. And you whining and crying because you got whooped. And it's like, well, if you'd have given me a minute to actually tell you how to do this thing, I had given you the strategy. I was going to give you the new and improved weapon that I just got done making for you. And the backup they would have been there. You wouldn't have had to do this thing. But you got way out in front of God, and you just got tore up. And then you come crawling back. God, your word didn't work. No, you went out there without it. Well, you went out there with the verse, but you didn't go out there with my word. He said, will you give them into my hand? And the Lord said to David, go up, for I will certainly give the Philistines into your hand. So he comes up and just whoops them. But then verse 22, it says, and the Philistines came up yet again and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. And when David inquired of the Lord, he said, you shall not go up. Go around to the rear and come against them opposite the balsam trees. And when you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the balsam trees, then rouse yourself, for then the Lord has gone out before you to strike down the army of the Philistines. Sometimes what we need to understand is there are some battles where God will send us out, and there are some battles where God will go out before us. There are some battles where He wants us to charge headlong into battle, and He's got our back. And there's some battles where He's like, you just wait here, I got this, and then you come in, I'll call you in when I got it all taken care of.
That's really good.
Strategy. But it's all offensive. None of it is defensive. We're not coming into the promised land and holding our shields and saying, please don't hurt me. I got all this armor, so hopefully I'll be protected from the blows of the enemy. No. No, we come into the promised land to fight. Look, go back to Joshua. We turn to Joshua chapter 3. Starting in verse 1. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and they set out from Shittim, and they came to the Jordan, he and all the people of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over. At the end of the 3 days, the officers went through the camp and commanded the people, as soon as you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God being carried by the Levitical priests, then you shall set out from your place and follow it. Yet there shall be a distance between you and it about 2,000 cubits in length. Do not come near it, in order that you may know the way you shall go, for you have not passed this way before. See, when we come into our promised land, and this is where we get a little twisted sometimes, is because when the promised land looks a lot like the wilderness, we think we know the path. I just spent so much time in the wilderness, and now my position of placement looks just like the wilderness that I was in. I know the route to go. And God is saying, no. See, I'm bringing you into this land, and because you're in a new position, because you're in a new place, you have not come this way before. So you need to follow me, and you need to follow my direction. Don't get out in front of me. And don't get so close that you can't see the direction I'm going. Step back a little bit and let me lead you, because you have not come this way before. And Joshua said to the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. And Joshua said to the priests, take up the ark of the covenant and pass on before the people. So they took up the ark of the covenant and went before the people. The Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. And as for you, command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant, when you come to the brink of the waters of the Jordan, you shall stand still in the Jordan. And Joshua said to the people of Israel, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. And Joshua said, here is how you shall know that the living God is among you, and that He will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Jebusites. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is passing over before you into the Jordan. Now therefore, take 12 men from the tribes of Israel, from each tribe a man. And when the soles of the feet of the priests bearing the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off from flowing, and the waters coming down from above shall stand in one heap. So when the people set out from their tents to pass over the Jordan with the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people, and as soon as those bearing the ark had come as far as the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bearing the ark were dipped in the brink of the water, now the Jordan overflows all its bank throughout the time of the harvest. The waters coming down from above stood and rose up in a heap very far away at Adam, the city that is beside Zarethan, and those flowing down toward the sea of Arabia, the Salt Sea, were completely cut off, and the people passed over opposite Jericho. The moment of transition. We get into this place in our minds where after we come into our position, we get so weary with battle sometimes that we think perhaps God is no longer for us. Perhaps God has no longer won the victory. Perhaps this is no longer where I should be. Perhaps I should turn around and go back to where I was, or let's go a different direction, or let's stop. At the moment of transition, God told Joshua, and Joshua told the people, this moment, remember this moment of transition, when we cross the Jordan and you see the waters piled high to make your transition complete. Remember that, because that is a testament that God will drive out all the inhabitants of the land. Look, He's not saying when you win the first battle. How do we know God's with us? Well, when we win the first battle, we'll know He's with us. And the problem is we get into battle and we lose. Because we're expecting the end result to be proof that God is with us. But the reality is the proof that God is with us was in the transition from the wilderness to the placement. It was in the transition from the wilderness to the promised land. When we crossed over our wilderness experience and we get into our position of placement, that transition is proof that God is with us. We forgot. It seems insignificant. We read through the rest of the book of Joshua, and the crossing, what happens when we read the rest of the book of Joshua is the crossing of the river Jordan seems insignificant. Well, they crossed the river. No, the thing we remember about the book of Joshua is, man, Jericho, the walls, man, the sun stood still, and the 5 armies, just slaughter and mayhem, and it was like, woo, and the children of God were just, yeah. But the most significant part of it all was the moment that the Jordan stood on end, and they crossed over into the promised land. Wow. That is the moment of most significance. Because that is the moment that declared to the children of Israel, all of our battles will be victorious. God will take us through this land. He will give us victory. It's easy, a lot of times, when we get caught up in battle, to look at the failures that we've had. And darkness is very accommodating to us. They will remind us of failures that we have long forgotten about. They'll bring it before us and say, ooh, and while you're thinking of that one, here's this one. Ooh, and while you're thinking of that one, remember this? Oh, you didn't remember that? Well, check out this. When you remember that one, it's going to connect to this thought, which is going to bring this one back up in your face. How do you like that? Failure, 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 failure. What? We've heard the statement, it was good when it came out, but now it's become a cliche. Well, when the enemy reminds you of your past, you remind him of his future. How well does that really work? You guys had good success with that one? Man, you should have seen it the other day. Darkness came up to me, and they're like, hey, did you remember this? And I was like, yeah, well, check this out. In the future, this is going to happen. And he was like, oh, and he ran away. No. I haven't had that actually happen yet. But you know what I have had happen? Darkness has come up and reminded me of my past. I've actually reminded him of his past too. It's like, oh, yeah, those failures that you're bringing up in my life. Well, first of all, check this out. Okay, I'm only 40 years old. Only 40 years old. So, and I'm one person in my life. So I have, if we're looking at it in the scope of time, and in the scope of all humanity, billions and billions and billions and billions of people over all time since creation began. I'm one person with a list of failures out of all the failures in the world. So I got about that much. Yeah. Now check this out. Just in my life alone, the day I was born, darkness, you failed. I had a twin brother, he didn't make it. I lived, but he didn't. Darkness had my number since the beginning. Tried to take me out since the beginning. At my birth, you failed. At a couple of years old, you failed. At about 5 years old, you failed again. At 8 years old, you failed. At 13 years old, you actually failed twice. At 14, you failed again. At 16, you failed again. At 18, you failed again. At 21 years old, you failed again. And at 25 years old, you failed huge. And that's just the moments you tried to take my life. Now let me list the other failures. The drug addictions that I was hooked to, that you are bringing up as my failure, guess what? I've become victorious over that, which means that is now your failure. Amen. The problem that I had in my life that I couldn't get over, that you're bringing up as was my failure, guess what? I'm over it now. You know what that means? It's your failure. Every success that I've had is your failure. And then, if that's not enough for you, let's multiply that by the billions of people on this earth. How many times have you failed, darkness? And then let's multiply that by the thousands of years that you've been in existence on this earth, trying to get people to fail. You want to talk about failure? You're the king of failure. Amen. I'll take my little sticky note worth of failures. Yeah. Because you know what I know? The Word says that the books could not contain the works of Jesus Christ, which means that also the books could not contain the amount of your failures. Because every success of Jesus was your failure. Amen. Good. So you don't want to go... You don't want to go par for par on failures here, because you've got me beat by a long mile. Matter of fact, you're the biggest failure I've ever seen. Amen. I have never seen anybody fail as much as you have. I mean, come on now, church. We can get into it. See, we're afraid of him. He's a defeated foe. He is a fallen angel. He was cast out of heaven by God. And I'm not saying we stand up and bring a railing accusation against him, but I am going to put him in his place when he brings one against me. We went back to 2 Samuel. I read that verse 22 again. 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 22. And the Philistines came up yet again. Now, one of the problems that we have with spiritual warfare in our Christian culture is that we spent so much time talking about all of the victory of battle and all of the power and all of this stuff, but what we never really discuss is the fact that when you beat darkness once, they're going to retaliate. I mean, what did you think would happen? Just because you beat them once, don't think that they're just going to automatically lay down from that moment on. The Philistines didn't even wait. They were beaten bad by David in that valley. And almost immediately they came with retaliation and camped in the same valley they were just beaten in. You know what that tells me? That tells me that when darkness is involved, the fact that they lose is not the deterrent for them from fighting. They're not attacking because they've won so many battles. We got to get that out of our head. We think, well, if darkness keeps coming at me, look at all the battles they won. No. No, darkness keeps coming at you because they're void of any intelligence that says, in spite of the fact that we never win, or let me rephrase that, even though we never win, we should still fight. There's this smart people. If they get beat so many times, they'll stop fighting. When I was in 7th grade, this guy, I had this horrible problem of just speaking way too quickly. And I'm this little, I'm skinny now. You should have seen me in 7th grade. Right? And I thought, my mouth thought I was this, big dude or something. I was a smart mouth. I was just a little, because I had the quickest comebacks and I didn't have quite the muzzle on my mouth yet to keep it from coming out. And so I'm in 7th grade and I go to the bathroom and I'm in the bathroom and this guy comes in. It's like me and Levi standing up next to each other. That's the difference between me and this guy. And he comes in and I was so happy and proud. Back then I was all about cowboy everything. And I had my brand new cowboy boots and my brand new cowboy hat. I'll go into the bathroom and he comes in. Nice boots, cowboy, and he steps. Dude, they don't even have a scuff on them yet. And he steps on my boot and scuffs it. And there wasn't enough knowledge. There wasn't enough brains in my head to keep me from proceeding with my next course of action. And I pushed him as hard as I could, and it kind of knocked him off balance a little bit. I said, they're brand new boots, don't scuff them up. And for the next 2 minutes, that dude threw me around that bathroom like I was a rag doll. Like it was effortless. And then his friends were saying, dude, we're going to get in trouble, man. Come on, we got to go. And he said, there was this alley, it was in Lander, Wyoming, and there was this, they had the football field outside the middle school, and right across from the football field, there was a street that went back, and off that street there's an alley. And that was the fight alley. That was where everybody, because it was close enough to the school that you could get there in a short amount of time, but it was in the alley and there was no houses that could really see what's going on, and you were hidden, and so it was the alley. And so he said, in the alley after school. Still not enough brains in my head to think that this would be a bad idea. So after school, I met him out in the alley. I thought that when he said the alley, that he was just talking to me. What I realized is that somehow there was like a PA system in the bathroom that the whole school was listening in on. And when he said the alley, like the whole school must have heard him say it, because the whole school showed up to the alley. And there I am. Cowboy boots in a dirt alley with a dude that's like 3 times my size. And I've never been in a fight. I mean, I fought my brothers a lot. We got in fights all the time. But not like a real fight before this moment. And so I'm sitting there, and I give this dude my cowboy hat. Keep that safe there. I'll be back. I get in there, I'm like, right? And I got all these people around me. I mean, they're yelling out, swing high, swing low, swing high, swing low. I mean, and I'm like, great, now I'm confused. I don't know what should I try to punch him in the face? Should I punch him in the gut? Somewhere else, maybe? I mean, what should I do here? And so I'm like, well, they're saying high and low, so I'll split the difference and I'll swing in the middle. And I swung, and when I swung, that dude just sidestepped my punch, came at me, grabbed me by the hair, and 3 times kneed to my forehead. And when he went like that the last time, I flew back, but it's not because he let go of my hair, it's because he ripped my hair out. He hit me in the head so hard, it ripped my hair out, and I flew back. And I'm laying there on the ground half unconscious, like, what's going on? I'm just conscious enough to see one of my friends who was this new guy that had come into school, big dude. This dude was wrestler, this dude was massive. And he come up and grabbed that guy by the shirt collar and said, that's enough, leave him alone. And that was it. Not enough smart. I mean, the dude threw me around the bathroom like I'm a rag doll. Darkness doesn't have the smarts. Okay, when they get beat in a fight, they don't look at that as an excuse to not come back and fight again. They're relentless. They come back. They retaliate time after time after time after time after time. The only way to overcome darkness, to keep them from retaliating, is to completely drive them out of the land. That's it. The only time you have peace is when darkness is completely removed and destroyed. What that means, we can't afford to fight every battle in a defensive posture. Because they're never going to stop. They're never going to stop. You may hold your ground, but they're never going to stop. The only way to get them to stop is to drive them out of the land. It's to go on the offensive. You have to. Listen, in our spiritual lives, if we're tired of fighting the battle, it's not time to give up. It's time to go on the offensive. We allow darkness the foothold, they will do what they have done in all of our lives over the last months, year, couple years even. They will swarm us and surround us, and we will be so busy in our defensive mode that we don't even recognize that we have been separated from the rest of the warriors in battle. And one day, we look up and we realize we're surrounded by darkness and we're totally alone. Separate. They can come into a church. It doesn't have to be through offense. You know that, right? It doesn't have to be through offense. We think offense is the only thing in a church that's going to separate people. Offense isn't the only thing in a church that separates people. It's being so bombarded by the enemy that we're so busy fighting our battles that we can't even think about being of any help to anybody else who's fighting theirs. And so much time goes by and we're so focused on the battles we're fighting, and over here they're focused on the battles they're fighting, and over here no one's focused on the battles they're fighting. And when we get to the point where we can't take it anymore, we cry out for help. Nobody can help. They're doing everything they can to survive in their own battles. So what do we have to do? We have to make a willed determination that I am no longer just going to sit here and take the beating and hope that I survive. But I am going to stand up in the power of God. And having done all to stand, I'm going to continue to stand. And I'm going to take my sword. And I'm going to start pushing back. And I'm going to start taking back ground. And I'm not just going to take ground for my own self. I'm taking ground to get me from here to the other person in battle. And then when we join forces, we're going to take ground to get to the other person in battle who's by their self. And then when we join, we're going to close the ranks and we're going to get back together in the line of battle so that we can actually start pushing this thing forward. What we have to do in our congregation, because this is where we're at in our congregation. This is where we're at Harvest Time. This is where I'm at. This is where Joy's at. This is where all of you guys are. We've been so bombarded with our own battles. We've been so fighting our own battles that we lift our heads up and we're all spread apart. And darkness has us each surrounded and separated from each other. And then it's easy to get offended. Well, why didn't you come help me? I can't. I'm doing all I can just to stay alive here. But what we do in those moments, God placed us here. Okay? God placed us in Rollins. God placed us. I don't like Rollins. Too bad. God placed you here. Get over it. There's a lot of stuff I don't like in my life, but guess what? Own it. That's who you are. That's what you do. I don't always like construction. Too bad. That's what you do. Own it. I don't always like being the pastor. Too bad. That's what you do. Own it. I don't always like prison ministry. Too bad. That's what you do. Own it. Quit trying to fight what God has placed you in and own it. Stand up and say, I determine. Because I remember when God placed me here. I remember the crossing from the wilderness into my position of placement. That marks the fact that God will clear out the land. The work that He did to get me here. Every single one of us can go back to the last place we were in before we were here. And we can recount the trail of miracles that took place from there to here. All of those are the testament that God is with us, that He is going before us, that He will clear the land, that we will have victory. Those are the important moments to remember. It's not the battles that we've won or lost. It's the transition from where we were to where we are. If we can remember that, then we can start to find the power and strength as we rely on God and lean hard into God to stand up in the midst of our battles. And I'm going to start making my way over to Kathy and Greg. I'm going to start making my way over to Annette and Greg. I'm going to start making my way over to Susan. I'm going to start making my way over to John and Courtney. I'm going to start making my way over to Levi and Alicia. And when I get with Kathy and Greg and we get these battles, and we're going to stand up together and we're going to make our way over to Annette and Greg. And when we join forces, then we're going to stand up together. Now we're 6 strong and we're going to make our way over to Susan. And when we join forces, we're going to stand up. Now we're 7. And we're going to make our way over to John and Courtney, and now we're 9. And come on, people. This is how we get back together. This is how we reforge. This is how we rebuild connection. We're not losing anybody here. I refuse to lose anybody. Jesus said, I never lost anyone except the one of whom it was prophesied. There are some that we will lose, but not because we lost them, but because this wasn't the spot. It doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It doesn't mean that they're bad. There's another spot. There's another spot. And they'll find it. Because God's with you. We're going to bond together. We're going to grow together. We've got to stop how this looks. And I'm going to close with this. How this looks. Because we make a conscious decision today. We make a conscious decision that from now on, we're not going to fight our battles alone. From now on, we're not going to try to do it on our own. From now on, when I need help, I'm going to call somebody to help. And from now on, when you need help, call me for help. And I may not always be able to get there in the moment. Don't be offended. Call somebody else. Get everybody's phone number in here. Put out the text message send it to everybody. SOS. Somebody will respond. And we'll call around and we'll check. Hey, can you go? No, I really don't. Okay, well, I can go. Okay, awesome. We'll get this taken care of. Do what we got to do. But we got to reach out to each other. We got to reach out to each other. We're not in this thing alone. No one of us, not one single person in this room, and even the people who are here because they're out traveling or whatever, none of them are in this alone. alone. EJ and Robin aren't in this alone. We're not in this alone. Tim is not in this alone. We're in this together. And I know that it's been hard. I know at times it feels like we've lost our family connection. It has. It's just reality. At times it feels like we've lost our family connection. At times we find ourselves saying, well, Harvest kind of talks about being a family. I'm feeling pretty isolated. I'm feeling pretty separated. I'm feeling pretty alone.